Hello, it's me, Aaron, and today I'm going to ask you a question. What does Souls-like even mean? Well, obviously, things that are like Souls, Dark, things that are like Dark Souls. But that's pretty vague, isn't it? So you know what? Go on, define this term for me. No, wait, I can't really hear you. And now that I think about it, it was kind of stupid to ask you. After all, you're just an incompetent fool. But I know who to ask. Steam, my best friend and my wallet's worst enemy. So let's just search Souls-like and see what comes up. Let's see, Dead Cells? What? Dead Cells? Wait, how many things are there in common between Dead Cells and Dark Souls? Alright, so how many did you get? All 7? Congrats, you're wrong. There are only differences, it's just all differences. What the hell, Steam? What makes Dead Cells a Souls-like? There's no endurance, there's no coming to your body to get your money back when you die, and it's 2D pixel art. There are also only 3 stats that reset every time you die, and all they do is augment the damage of a type of weapon. It's the complete opposite of Dark Souls stats. And it's not even a 3D action RPG. I guess the game is hard, but can we really call it the Dark Souls of roguelikes? No, it's a roguelike. What does it have to do with Dark Souls except from being difficult? Nothing. But I guess there's this one reference. But that's about it. So, is Souls-like just a vague term to say that things are hard? No, it can't be just that. And since Steam is going to be useless, I'll just enter this myself. So now, what even is Dark Souls? No, what are some defining characteristics that could make other games using them a Souls-like? Well, let's ask Wikipedia. So, a Souls-like is a subgenre of action role-playing and action-adventure games known for high levels of difficulty and emphasis on environmental storytelling, typically in a dark fantasy setting. It has its origin in Demon Souls and the Dark Souls series by From Software, the themes and mechanics of which directly inspire several other games. Souls-like games developed by From Software themselves have been specifically referred to as Soulsborne games. A portmanteau of Souls and Bloodborne Souls-like have been adopted by a number of critics and developers. However, it also has received question whether it is a true genre or a collection of shared mechanics. Oh, so even Wikipedia doesn't know then. So for now, all we have is hard game that's like Dark Souls. Great. But now, I think it would be interesting to go back on Steam and see what tags Dark Souls has, to try and identify something, anything that could be the thing that makes the thing a Souls-like. So, other than Souls-like, Dark Souls is marked as Dark Fantasy, RPG, Hard, Action, Dark Fantasy, Atmosphere, Action RPG, Great Soundtrack, Hentai. I guess there are a few tentacles. Rich universe, multiplayer, adventure, third person, replayability, rich in story, exploration, personalized characters, original soundtrack. Well, this really didn't help us. Alright, well, I have another idea. So, one thing I've seen when talking about what exactly is a Souls-like is that a pretty big amount of people believe that when they see a third-person game with a stamina bar and a roll/dash with iframes, it's a Souls-like. So, would this mean that Sekiro isn't a Souls-like? Because there are no endurance bar, and it's something that has been talked about for a while. So let's just see how many things Sekiro has in common with Dark Souls, and maybe you can conclude if it is a Souls-like or not, and if it is, then maybe rolls and green bars are not mandatory. But then, maybe a Souls-like is a game that has some common features with the Souls games. You don't have to have all of them, but just 3 to 5 might be enough to be considered a Souls game. But anyways, let's go back to Sekiro. So, I compared all the tags from Dark Souls 1 and Sekiro, and the common tags were Hard, Action, Adventure, Third Person, Rich in Story, Atmosphere, Dark Fantasy, RPG, and Dark. And the ones unique to Sekiro were Solo Game, Ninja, Infiltration, Open World, Violence, and assassination, hack and slash, gore, and rhythm. So, about a half of Sekiro stacks an element of Dark Souls as well. So can it be considered a Souls-like? Or game? Because I mean, when I say a hard third-person dark fantasy action RPG, you think of Dark Souls. But it also is valid to think of Sekiro. But wait, Sekiro also doesn't have a lot of the main mechanics of Dark Souls. For example, dropping your money where you died, which is a mechanic that a large portion of people seem to think that is one of the main mechanics that make a Souls-like a Souls-like. There is also really little if any stats or build customization, which is one of the main things in Dark Souls, but the gameplay itself is radically different. Dodging is no longer the main way of invading the hits, the combat is entirely based on deflecting. And finally, the story has absolutely nothing to do with the other Souls games. You're now an actual character and not a voiceless nobody. And the argument of the loop of spawning back at the bonfire every time you die, exploring difficult and labyrinth-like areas and opening shortcuts, isn't that just a metroidvania? But now, I think Sekiro is a very light Souls-like, and definitely not a Souls game. And if your opinion is different than mine, then you are 100% wrong, because it just happened that Hidetaka Miyazaki did an interview with GameSpot in 2018, and I quote, "Despite the fact that it introduces new mechanics and differs from those games in many ways, it still looks to be in the same vein as those action RPGs. However, From Software insists this new game is something entirely new and separate from those. Sekiro was not designed as an evolution of Soulsborne, of the Souls series. So yeah, it's confirmed. Sekiro is a Souls-like because of its dark fantasy setting and similar vibes and mechanics, but not a Soulsborne or a Souls game. So yeah, I think I got it. A Souls-like is a game with similar mechanics and vibes as Dark Souls. I mean, it was obvious, wasn't it? It's just a thing that are like Dark Souls. Idiot. But now, there are a lot of people that misuse the term Souls-like, so let's go over some of that. But first, please, I beg, stop calling hard games the Dark Souls of something. Like, Dark Souls isn't just a hard game, I mean come on, stop it, game journalists. But next, I'm going to name some examples of games or types of games that I think are Souls-like, and some other that aren't. So first, I would like to talk about those indie metroidvanias. For example, Hollow Knight or even Blasphemous. So, they're both just like Dark Souls. They require you to walk back to your body to get your money, they're both hard, have hard bosses behind fog gates-like gates you need to walk back to, and have the labyrinth-like areas and opening of shortcuts. But honestly, that's about it for the similarities. So, can those games really be called Souls-likes? I think not. Yeah, it's just that Dark Souls has some Metroidvania-ish elements. And so, yeah, Metroidvanias have some similarities with most Souls-likes, but Blasphemous and Hollow Knight are Metroidvanias more than they're Souls-like. And even if you can have both terms at once, I would say both Hollow Knight and Blasphemous are not Souls-like. I mean, they're not third-person RPGs with stats you can invest in. Next example is Thymnasia. I think it's just the same case as Sekiro, a light Souls-like, but not really a Souls game, you know? And Remnant from the Ashes. So basically, if you don't know, imagine Bloodborne, but only with the guns and the whole game is challenge dungeons. There. Well, I think it is a real Souls-like. From being a third-person action RPG, rolling the stats, to the dark setting, the hard bosses, fog gates, etc. So yeah, that's about it. So, the conclusion is, hard doesn't equal Souls-like. Taking some mechanics from the Souls series equal light Souls-like, or Souls-light. And yes, I just invented that term, and I have already trademarked it. And a game that resembles Dark Souls in tone, setting, mechanics, and is like a third-person action RPG with stats like those, is a real Souls-like. But anyways, thank you for watching. Your presence till the end is appreciated. And bye, I guess.